welcome everyone to the final session and final panel of the week. It's been a fun-packed thrill ride of a week so far. Thoroughly enjoyed it myself with the panel I hosted earlier this week on legal discussions and legal matters around ChatGPT, AI, etc., etc. Anyway, we move on swiftly now. The topic of discussion today is data, the only currency that matters. I'm joined by three esteemed guests who I will introduce momentarily. But first of all, let's bring up the slide on our first guest. So Anton Globus, incisive senior executive with 2 decades progressive leadership experience, directing transformation initiatives of substantial growth and scale, leading market expansions, corporate finance, advising within the financial, industrials, telecom, banking and fintech industry sectors, strong flair for entrepreneurship and commercialization with a high degree of thought, leadership and accountability. Anton, welcome. It's lovely to chat with you. I know we share some familiar background, having looked through profiles, etc., but it's good to finally talk to you. We're going to bring Prabhu up onto stage now. So Prabhu, expertise in remote non-destructive evaluation, NDE and structural health monitoring, passionate about service-orientated engineering, education and technology translation, associate editor of the international peer-reviewed journal Ultrasonics from Elsevier Group. Hi Prabhu, hi, welcome.
Hi Anton.
And our final guest, Vital, specialist expertise in valuations and risk analytics, deal evaluation support, market risk management and treasury information system analysis, driving major techno-functional and software development projects to achieve significant transformation across international markets, London, Singapore and India, aficionado of Japanese culture and cuisine, a man after my own heart. Welcome, Vital.
Thank you.
Hi, so let's start off the session. I know we've very briefly chatted prior to this session in the waiting room, but please, for all our guests at home, please give an introduction to yourselves and your associated companies. Prabhu, if you want to take the stage.
Thank you, Ed. I'm a professor of mechanical engineering at the department of, at IIT Madras. I was educated in the UK. I did my PhD at Imperial College London, where, no surprise, I studied ultrasonic non-destructive evaluation. I was also a postdoc at the same group for a while, and then I returned to join as an academic at IIT in Chennai. The IIT Madras in Chennai today is India's #1 ranked research-led university, and our group has been leading the revolution towards digital transformation in the infrastructure assessment sector. So over the last several years, both in my research as well as in the technology translation arenas, I've been working on various tools and technologies that will help digitalize information. So for example, today, a lot of inspections of critical infrastructure such as dams, bridges, pipelines, roads, pavements, and so on are carried out robotically. And some of the startups from our group that I'm associated with have been champions of these approaches. These lead to digital dashboards that can give instant access to vast amount of information for centrally located personnel, and then take action. And also these, this rich amount of digital information is also able to help us achieve prognosis, that is prediction of how a certain infrastructural asset is going to behave over a period of time, over how it is sensitive to geographies, to climate conditions, and so on. So some of the startups I'm associated with are Planist, that works in submersible robotic inspections of bridges and dams. Solinas is into pipeline inspection, particularly in the water and sewer line space. Zyma is into industrial IoT. And finally, the most recent startup I'm associated with is into blockchain-based digitalization for the healthcare system. So with that, Thank you so much, Ed, for having me over. On to other panelists.
More than welcome, Prabhu. Looking forward to discussing the dams and investigations. Anton, if you'd like to take stage.
Sure. Thank you, Ed, and thank you for having me today on the panel. So my background is of chartered accountant. I studied in South Africa, then worked across the globe in Africa, Russia, and now in UK. I spent most of my career prior to Paycent in the heavy industry environment. So I worked for a company that was an industrial distributor that also was one of the largest mining dealers for the Caterpillar equipment, the mining construction machines. And as part of that, obviously, across that career journey, I was exposed to various data initiatives. Towards the end of my time with that company, we tried to do sort of predictive maintenance. So collecting the big data from the machines and trying to predict when certain components will break down, etc. So that's quite a hot theme right now.
Yes.
I think across various verticals. And now I am with Paycent. So Paycent is a innovative money transfer company. We do a lot of cross-border transfers around the world in a very fast fashion, cost effectively. So it's I would say one of the pioneers in the UK space, and we are expanding globally now. So very exciting journey for me from that perspective. Haven't been previously exposed to the payments industry, but have a strong interest in it. Mm-hmm. So I hope that this journey really takes me and the company forward in a very good way, and very happy to be here.
Oh, super. Brilliant to hear, Anton. Thank you. And Vital.
Hi, this is Vital here. Thanks for inviting me for this panel. My background is in finance, and I'm basically a financial engineer. Started my career on Wall Street. I worked there, then around the globe for different banks, Singapore, London, and now I'm working in India for HDFC Bank, where I head the analytics desk. And I primarily deal with the financial market data. And as you know, the financial markets are getting complicated as the time progresses. So there's a lot of data is involved in that, and you need to employ, the new techniques, AI, machine learning, and we'll discuss on the panel today. And it's been a fabulous journey. And I'm always eager to learn from the other panelists on what are they doing in their fields, and whether I can pick up some brains and then apply it in my field.
Oh, absolutely. Same here as well. I'm incredibly keen to speak to all of you about what you've been involved in and how you're working on, especially around the compute elements and the data capture, and equally how you are monetizing and turning that data into currency, which is kind of key to today's project. I'm just going to do a point of admin. If anybody that is watching has any questions that you'd like to fire to the panelists, or there's anything particularly pertinent you'd like to ask, by all means pop it into the Q&A. I will be keeping an eye on the Q&A throughout the session, and as and when decent questions come up, so they've got to be good, I will feed them into and bring them up on screen so we can discuss them a little bit further. But just to start off, I'd like to speak about the data in the financial markets and impact of kind of computing power and AI and ML on trading at the moment. So if one of you would like to start on the conversation there, that would be brilliant. Because I just need to take a quick shot out of you because all our lights have gone off in the office again. So please bear with me 1 second. So yeah.
Sure, maybe I can give it a shot. Now, these are all my personal views, not of my employer, just as a disclaimer. I've seen over the last 25 years, the way the trading and investments have progressed. When early 90s, although you had Bloomberg terminals, but all the analysis used to happen on Excel spreadsheet, right? You used to take days to come out with some kind of estimate for investments. Now that thing happens in fraction of a second. So now the market is so agile that as soon as the earning report hits the street, immediately the algorithms will process the entire balance sheet being published, and you'll get a recommendation, right? And these algorithms are flourishing so much that the algorithms are competing with each other. So the markets are whoever is having the best algorithm is winning the race ultimately. So data is very important in this context, the quality data, and then the data scientist is very important. How he manages that data, how he analyzes that through his software, or he programs some algorithm. That's very important. Markets have become correlated around the globe. So anything happening, for example, in Japan impacts India. Anything happening in China impacts US markets. So it's no longer domestic oriented data. Now you need to have data sources from all across the globe. So processing of that large amount of data, big data set, has become a challenge. And there are various data sources out there to select a quality data has also become a very important step in this process.
I through my history of working with data and combining data sources, that seems to be quite a big issue. There are a lot of companies out there at the moment that have competing systems, potentially from mergers or acquisitions, where two companies have come together. They've got many competing systems. They need to potentially move on to another system, but they need to get a consolidated view of data at that point in time. It's so important to have accurate, real-time data for analytics and to prepare dashboards. I'm sure you've had experience in that, Prabhu.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. If for example, as you said, AI or predictive analytics has to work, you need to have access to a lot of data, and current data and live data, which is very important. And this is where sensors and robotics in the context of the industries I work in are so important today, right? So we are talking about managing infrastructure that is countrywide in a or across geographies. In a country like India or USA, for example, which are geographically spread out, the infrastructure tends to be vast and huge, and so getting real-time information, getting information that is time marked for climatic conditions, seasonal conditions, and so on is very, very important. And this is where gathering of data using, for example, aerial drones or underwater drones or land crawlers becomes so important as such. And these are the sources from which we are gathering live information and live data today. Similarly, in the context of healthcare, today we have increasing amount of instrumentation. Before COVID, for example, many of us wouldn't have even known what an oximeter is. Today, many of us are used to routinely, taking information from a pulse oximeter. People take temperature measurements. People take, dialysis, heart rate measurement, blood pressure measurements, and so on. All of these, if they are accessible to an algorithm, right, and in a reliable manner, then we are going to have more superior analytics at our disposal. And this is where the role of dashboards then comes into place. On one hand, you need tools, sensors, and robots that help us gather this information. On the other hand, you need to have dashboards that are then able to handle these kinds of large scale information and then process them in a rapid manner as such. Yeah.
The dashboards will only ever be as good as the person that designs them, though. It's quite a difficult job trying to create an individual dashboard for somebody that actually pulls up the information they want to see and need to see. And often I find that when I've had other people design dashboards for us, they more focus on their own capabilities and what they think is absolutely brilliant and they can bring to the table, which can be a little bit frustrating at times because you don't necessarily need all that. Just going back to something that you were saying, Vital, just now, Anton, I know you have a similar issue with global data, obviously with your cross-border payments, everything that's involved in PaySend. How are you dealing with the sorry, my screen's just switched off. Are you still catching me?
We
Yes,
are
we are.
able to see and hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, screen went off for a second. How are you managing to pick up and work with the data internationally across borders, compliance with GDPR, etc.? Has that been a big issue within what you're doing?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, our businesses, the core of our business is reliant on interconnectivity with hundreds of partners across the globe. The whole premise behind fintechs like Paysend is that they can do things either faster or cheaper, both than the incumbents.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole premise of an instant transfer requires a lot of connectivity in various formats, which brings with itself a lot of challenges in terms of data reliability, connectivity reliability, and kind of collecting and checking all of that. So the mechanism, the controls that you've got behind that become very critical. You've sent the money over. Has a transaction actually happened on the other end? Has the money reached the recipient? If it hasn't reached the recipient, where is it? Is there sort of instant feedback? And, when you then multiply it to the millions of transfers that we do sort of on a regular basis, that if a small problem becomes a very big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that stays very critical. In terms of dashboards, as a payments company, we've got tons of dashboards, as you can imagine. The source of truth is really critical in terms of building dashboards. So you can easily, especially as you're building up a business and you sort of migrate between systems, you can have multiple sources of truth.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a big point of contention, both within the company as well as externally.
Yeah.
And typically requires you to converge at some point onto what you believe is the best source of that truth. So once you've gone through that cleansing process and you've established that, then your data becomes far more reliable.
Mm-hmm.
You also need to, I think, in terms of dashboards, really understand what is it that you're after. So you can have so many dashboards, and you can design so many dashboards, and then nobody uses them. So you really need to understand what you want, ideally, before you go about building all this beautiful looking
it's
and tables.
It's kind of it's almost like the dashboards are the currency of the CEO and the C-suite, really. It's how they pick up on the latest data and they understand what's going on and where they need to move. And if you imagine a tokenized company, its value, those tokens are basically derived from the value of the C-suite, and it all feeds together and comes through. In Vita, you must be dealing with a lot of dashboards in what you do as well.
Well, in financial markets, you have traditional system vendors who provide data, right? So the main challenge that we face is the amount of data, different sources of data, combining that effectively, cost effectively, basically. The cost is very important because each of these providers is having his own format. The time is in a sense, so you need to combine it because the markets are real time, they move. That's one of the important things. Secondly, granularity. I keep stressing this word. The reason being, I can give you one example. Say, a company reports earnings, and know that the earnings are sometimes revised. The data provider will provide you the revised earnings, not the earlier ones. So even the version control of the data is very important, right? The corrections to the data. There is some information in that as well. In the market, you'll have a particular stock being traded on different exchanges, right? You have it traded on Singapore, London. So what happens in Singapore markets and what happens in London markets, conditions are different. The amount of money that gets traded in Singapore is different from London. So all these minute details are very important. And how do you manage this kind of data sets is a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I mean, it can lead to volatility quite easily, can't it?
So you can see the market when it moves, especially the currency market from different centers. You'll see the liquidity conditions change, the volatility change. So it's not just you need to explain why that thing has happened before you can put in a trade. Right now, it happens systematically in the sense there are algorithms who take care of that. So the life is a bit easier. but still the quality of data is very important. If there is any spike in the data, your all calculations can go wrong.
Yeah, because you need to be able to react to the alerts as they come up on screen to work with those. You need some kind of element of human interaction to make sure that stop losses get put in place and acted on as soon as possible. And ultimately, you need to make sure that your connections are as fast as possible. I mean,
Exactly.
Sometimes a delay of milliseconds can cause issues for algorithms, and it can give you quite a good advantage if there is a movement going on. So
if you heard the term high frequency trading, so
yes.
people trade a millisecond, right? So money is made in milliseconds. So that's very important.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it feeds to the having an authentic point in time data, which is something that I know you've been quite keen in interested in.
Yeah. Because generally when you look at time series data, you will get a data from say 2001 to 2022, but no one will give you a point in time data. They will not give you a snapshot of the data, right? COVID happened on that particular day. Can you give me the entire data set? People will maintain different time series, so you need to spend time combining these time series to get a scenario. And for us in the
Yes.
market, the scenario is very important.
Yes.
So I want to understand on my book what would be the impact of a particular scenario that has happened in the past. So that's very important.
Prabhu, I saw you nodding during that and agreeing. Do you, what are your thoughts?
Well, when he spoke about time series data and the requirement for fusing information across domains and so on, what struck me was the fact that the problems that we deal with are similar. It's just that the context is very different. That's about it. So for me, I'm dealing with currency indirectly because what I'm gathering is information on structural integrity or integrity of a human body, for example. And monetization is a second step. Monetization is if I can prevent a dam from busting, for example, I've saved a lot of money. If I prevent a bridge from causing having a catastrophic damage or saving a pipeline from leaking catastrophically, I've saved a lot of a lot of money. So the monetization is indirect in this context, but the kinds of problems we deal with are like for like. We get information from multiple sensors, we get information from different geographies, varying seasons, for example. We sometimes get information from multiple ways of capturing data, for example an aerial drone and an underwater drone, for example. So and these tend to be time series because you are recording information at different instances and then trying to gather some information on the in a prognostic manner. So that's what was making me nod and chime in as such. Yeah.
What sort of real world examples can you share around the gathering of the data and how that's impacted you?
Yeah. So, for example, Planis, one of the startups I'm associated with, routinely does inspections of river crossings of road and railway bridges. And during one of these, routine river crossings in the western state of Maharashtra, we came across a complete horizontal crack in a pillar of
Okay.
And it's a very commonly used bridge for rail rail lines in that sector. And so we reported it, and immediately that segment was shut down. And imagine what kind of catastrophic situation could happen if the type of feature is not reported or detected as such. And there is also instances when we sort of made predictions based on our past analysis that, for example, this dam is going to leak at this point of time. Can you just go and fix it? Right. So those are some real world examples I can present where gathering data in a timely manner and analyzing them in a timely manner has led to cost savings and life savings.
Exactly. Anton, in your previous role with the heavy industry, I assume that came under your purview as well, around the analytics on machine faults, etc.
Yeah, so towards the end of my time there, Caterpillar has invested a lot into they partnered with startups as well and digital companies to try and better predict when the machines will fail. So the machines got outfitted with, I mean, they always had sensors, but they got outfitted with a lot more sensors. Then the data was collected in real time around the globe to various data centers, and we as a dealer had access into our fleets. And the idea was then to link up preventive maintenance. Obviously, with heavy machinery, preventive maintenance is typically seen as a precursor to catastrophic failure. So if you do your preventive maintenance, you should avoid catastrophic failure. So those types of indicators would tell us when things are about to fail, hopefully, and then we could take corrective action. Now, like all AI, it needs to be taken with a pinch of salt in terms of, normally that type of data is very good at predicting high-level trends and not very good at telling you like exactly when things will happen. So expectations, I think, were very different from different participants of that project. And, depending on what your viewpoint was, you were either happy with what was going on or really disappointed as to what it could do. So I think setting the expectations right for AI type applications is really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of our partners, one of our Canadian partners at the moment, has a tool that basically allows unskilled labourers and unskilled people to have expert assistance in the background, and that allows them to repair faults and to do far more than they would be able to do. And there's a lot of potential for that within the medical world as well.
Yes. We had something very similar at again, the idea was that you have a junior technician on the job, and an expert back at the office with augmented reality or whatever other options could kind of come on and either demonstrate what to do or take over and perform a job. So that's a really good application, I think, and pretty much
It is,
in that environment, because the jobs are very geographically spread. They could be thousands of kilometers away. Sending another person there physically would take a week, etc. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's fantastic stuff being able to leverage deep technology to really improve and also provide so much additional safety within the factors. And obviously coming back to kind of the topic where we're talking, the currency here is just, it's saving money, it's saving time, it's saving effort, it's providing so much additional benefit to the companies that we're working with by just providing additional tools that can maybe stop some qualified engineer having to travel 200-300 miles to go to see something, when he can quite easily talk to somebody else that's got relevant experience through how to correct something. Anyway, I digress. Let's have a look at a couple of the questions that are coming through on the Q&A. No. So can you provide examples of how... Oh, I think that was from the previous session. No. Anyway, I'm going to go back to you, Vital. I was very, very keen on our discussion earlier when we were talking through bits, and you mentioned the phrase quantamental investing. Would you like to elaborate? That's
yeah. So this phrase is quantitative plus fundamental. So quantamental. So initially, when the data was not there, it was scarce, or the world was not that data dependent, in the sense big data dependent. People used to have fundamental analysis, and then they will have their own predictions, and they will try to forecast. It's more fundamental. Yeah. Now you have data coming in, so now you're combining data with the fundamental information. So it has become a quantamental kind of investing. You have a data which is backing your prediction. You can substantiate your finding by referencing it to a particular data set. Now, one thing I remembered, after listening to the other panelists is, for example, it can relate to even COVID, is when a new market starts or a new topic comes in, like, for example, COVID, the data is scarce, right? then there is a deluge of data. So the financial markets are also the same. Initially you don't have much data. You need to create your own data set, synthetic data, have simulation models to create some data sets, and then you start getting in data from different sources, and then you have to fine tune your models, and then effectively replace empirical data with the simulation based data. So that's one of the challenges that we face. In some markets, there are so much data available that we need to pick up the right source. But in some part of the market, there is very, very less amount of data available. So you need to create your own model. So it's a combination of both.
Do you agree, Prabhu?
Yeah, and the more Vittal speaks, the more I'm shocked and surprised that somebody from a financial market and somebody from an engineering background like me, we do very similar stuff. And we
I'm a
often
financial engineer, so basically I can talk the same engineer.
yeah, so we do the same. We have surrogate models, we have simulation models. Absolutely, where in a situation where we do not have any information, we go with simulation. We try to add noise to the simulation, try to make those models closer and closer to the reality by trying to gather as much as possible about the field conditions and so on. And indeed, in a global model, there could be regions where the model is fuzzy because it's not really well validated, and then there could be regions where it is very, very well authenticated through repeated use cases and so on. So and what is beautiful now is that there is a part of AI that we also work on. All of you have heard of generative AI and so on, where we also generate this kind of data based on sparse information available, and that is a very exciting space to be in right now. To give you an example, let's say you are looking for defects in a structure, and you have never investigated a structure, that kind of structure before. Can we use AI to infer just on basis of let's say a couple of data points what the data in that kind of situation would look like? That looks very exciting to me as a field to be in right now.
Cool. Okay. So what challenges have you encountered? Sorry, I'm going to pull this up on screen. Can you see that? What challenges have you encountered while implementing data analytics in finance, and how did you overcome them?
Well, there are challenges all along, in the sense, whenever there is a new product that comes into the market, or a new instrument comes into the market, there's always a challenge to get that thing. It's a money involved, right? When you're trying to invest in a new asset, then you need to be sure about how that formulation works, basically a value of that particular product. And the value of that product is dependent on the data. So you start with data, you start with understanding the underlying variables, and then you build your model on top of that. So initial challenges are getting the quality data, then getting your model trained on that data, and then you start using it. The next challenge that comes in is there are market participants. It's a collective, right? So and you're trading the same asset. So it is not like a COVID vaccine where there are multiple companies working on their own vaccine. Here, there's only one asset. People are trading only gold. People are trading only IBM stock. So everyone is using his own model to trade that particular asset. So the real test that comes in, or the real challenge, is whenever there is a new instrument, whether you are correct, how much you are inaccurate against the market. Because if you are inaccurate, there is a money involved in the trade. You're putting your money on that. You might make a substantial loss. So, accuracy of your data, accuracy of your model is very, very important. And over the period of time, as the market evolves, that error will reduce because the data points will keep coming in. You keep fine tuning. So the challenge is whenever there is a new product launch or a new instrument, it's very, very critical. You take measured steps, you understand the data, and then you model it.
Thank you, Vital. Let's bring this up now on screen. Can you provide examples of how data-driven insights have helped you optimize financial processes or identify new revenue opportunities?
Well, yes. As you find the new segment to invest in or new asset class to invest in, you have to harness, power of AI or power of machine learning or your understanding of financial engineering and analyze the data. So you can find the trends in the data, you can find correlations between the data, and you can be the first person to identify a particular trading strategy or undervalued asset to invest in, or during the COVID bull market, you could identify a particular stock to invest in. You could invest in Nvidia if you feel that AI
Exactly.
is going. So these kind of things, but you need to be understanding how the markets are evolving and should have tools to understand the data.
Again, it comes back to what you said earlier. It's how good is your model and how well you refine your model as you go forward, and what are the signals that are coming up, and how do you react to them in a real time environment, and obviously where do they feed to, who jumps on it and who reacts to it. Okay, I'm getting quite a lot of questions come up here, so let's bring up another one here. I mean, how do you collaborate with other departments to leverage data for cross-functional decision making? That's been directed to you, Anton.
Okay, great. Payson does quite a lot of its own sort of tech stack. So our engineering team then works very closely with the product team, finance team, etc., in terms of both what do they need to develop as well as what do they need to develop first. And looking at that, we're looking at obviously at the financial opportunity, but we're also looking at the market opportunity and at the strategy in terms of where we want to take the company. So we've got a big push now to sort of move our tech stack to the next generation, and that definitely I can see is working well, exactly because of the cross-functional collaboration and pulling all the people together all the time, that we're all working on the same goal.
Okay. Prabhu, I've had a question come in for you. How do you ensure data accuracy and reliability when dealing with large volumes of financial data? Oh, I've lost your sound.
Sorry. Yeah, so engineering data, I suppose, is what is being referred to. Right. But it's a brilliant question. How do you ensure reliability is a major point of debate in various engineering sectors. And by and large, what we have concluded is robotic inspection, whether it is aerial drones or underwater drones, if they are well designed, or ground robotics, intelligence ground vehicle based inspections, are far more reliable than human based data collection. And that's exactly how we are closing the gap on reliability as such.
Just to add from the financial markets perspective, the data quality, you get data every day. So you need to, banks and everyone have their data departments or data teams going through that set of data that has come in, incremental data, to clean that. You have different rules which are in place to understand whether is there any outlier, or shall I figure out whether this data point is stale. It may be a repeat of yesterday's data point, whether data is actually moved or not, or there is a fat finger. It is possible that you can have a fat finger in your data. So all these tools are involved, and there are statisticians sitting out there who will do some statistical analysis of the data to figure out whether it is passing his tests, and there are people who are checking the data points before it goes into the system.
Vital, I'm going to move on a little bit now from the data side. I'm particularly keen to find out a bit more about life since the merger at HDFC. How's your general day-to-day life changed, and what's been the progression since the merger?
Well, I can't talk much in detail about the details about the merger and all, but yes, we have grown in size, and so it gives us more balance sheet to play with. And anyways, our products are similar, and and we got merged with a mortgage parent, so it's a different silo altogether. Uh, yeah, but we have added customers, and we're looking forward to serve them. Yeah,
Cool.
the life is similar. I don't think it has become more hectic. I think it's
No.
yeah.
So same work, different, slightly modified company name. So I know everybody here is involved in startups or has been involved in startups and has been very keen in investing in startups and getting involved on the whole deep tech startup strategy. I was just wondering if you'd like to share a bit of your experience and what's been happening between yourselves over the last few years. Prabhu?
Yeah, ever since 2014, when our government gave a big push to startups to the National Startup Mission, it's been one of the most exciting spaces to be in. For me as an academic, I think it is a BCAD difference in the sense that in our lab we were always developing cutting edge technologies, but they were not finding their way into the field, mainly because we in a university we work at lower technology levels, so products are it's so much more difficult to have them translated to the field. And for us, startups are a very good finisher. They are partners with us. We work together with them in taking our solutions to the field. The startup space in the deep tech arena in the country has been in India has been booming, and of course it's been the same across the world, in Israel, the same in London and New York as well. And a lot of it is driven by advances as well. Advances such as blockchain, advances digital ledger technologies, AI, machine learning, virtual reality, artificial and augmented reality, and so on. So these have been driving the whole space. And when I started, for example, I never imagined that I would be working with data one day, right? Because the subject I studied for my PhD was very traditional stress analysis. I don't know if you have an engineering background, but from there to looking at data networks, securitizing them. If I look back at the journey and I wonder how this came about, it's purely driven by the startup revolution that we are seeing here. Yeah.
Anton, I know you're involved in some early stage ventures, and I've been having a quick look through your profile. Do you want to share some of those details?
Yeah, so I am involved in a project where we are trying to automate the verification of financial statements. So kind of basing on my audit background, that was one of the pain points that I saw where, auditors spend a lot of time kind of ticking and tying voluminous documents. So we try to, and I'm going to use the coin term AI to improve that. Which was sort of a combination of scanning in the financials and then building algorithms behind it to check them in a more, much faster manner. So sort of in seconds instead of hours. So, that's kind of in all of those things, you need to really find a pain point, and then you need to align your technological solution to that pain point very carefully, and then hope for a good customer fit.
Excellent. Vital, how are you getting involved in the deep tech startup ecosystem?
Well, I'm not directly involved in any startup as such, but yes, banks work with startups in getting a lot of things done, and I guess it's a general banking trend that startups bring value to the traditional banking model, and banks generally would like to employ startups in solving a problem, right? You're not trying to compete with a new startup, you're trying to be partnering with them. So That's general approach I see globally.
So following on from that, Vital, I've had some questions through regarding entrepreneurs. Can you share examples of how data-driven insights have helped entrepreneurs identify market trends or understand customer needs?
I mean, a particular example as such, yeah, you can look at, for example, credit decision making. There's so much of a data being there, especially in India. You'll have different startups having payment gateways and retail websites and retail apps. You get that data, and then you can have different cuts of that data and understand the consumer trends and launch a product to a particular segment of the market. So that I see happening on a daily basis. Payment gateways is another channel where you try to make the payments very efficient. Credit decision making is another one.
Cool. I mean, data-driven insights are quite key to one or two of our startups that we've got within the network science portfolio. And Credit Nirvana is a very good example of that. They are providing large banks with background information on their creditors at the time as to who should be chased, who shouldn't be chased, who's capable of paying, who's not capable of paying, and that information in a real-time basis when it comes to month end as to when you're deciding, well, who needs a push, who needs a kish, who needs some help, can be kind of critical in decision making. Prabhu, how have you been involved in data-driven insights?
I think that's the example that you cited is brilliant. Similarly, we have a startup, Plenome, which is focused on healthcare information systems. So one of the major challenges with healthcare, as opposed to bridges, for example, is that there is a whole big question on privacy. That nobody wants their information to be given off to analysis companies to come up with insights. That's where I think what Plenome has been doing at the fundamental level is very important, because they're using blockchain to protect the information and set up a system of access controls. And through this, what happens is the data becomes anonymized, and then you can generate large scale information. Imagine doing this on the scale of a country like India, or a continent like Africa. And then you start producing those kinds of insights. You're talking about what is the kind of next viral threat that is coming to humanity, what's the kind of vaccine that can be targeted to a certain gene pool. All sort of things can be unlocked, provided you can unlock the access to the information, access to the data, while while taking care of the privacy concerns of the patients, the ultimate source of that data. So that becomes very important in the medical context.
Oh, precisely. So you need to have sufficient compute to be able to do all the work, and you need to be able to make sure it's compliant with local regulations, GDPR,
absolutely,
in the UK.
HIPAA. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, I'm going to pull up another question on screen. So this one's from Jeffrey Williams. What role does machine learning or predictive analytics play in forecasting market trends or identifying potential financial risks?
Yeah, let me take that. So financial forecasting has become a very important area now. As I said at the start, it has become a quantamental kind of investing, right? So a machine learning model will help you. Maybe ultimately the control would be with the trader or the analyst, but at least the routine job of crunching the data would be taken over by machine learning algorithms. Nowadays, even the financial engineers know how to write a good machine learning algorithm. They can train algorithm. It's no longer financial mathematics anymore. You need to know statistics as well. You need to know Python and coding everything. So, and they do employ these techniques, and ultimately, whatever helps you in making decision, that is very important. It can reduce the stress on the trading team. There are some things which can be done automatically, but ultimately there'll be a control, a manual control, right? Unless it's a high frequency trading where everything is automated. But when you look at high volume, high value trading, there's always a human element there, which will take the call ultimately. And
Yeah.
many times you find there are multiple algorithms or multiple machine learning algorithms being used on the same desk. You will
Mhm.
have competing algorithms giving you some prediction, and then you figure out which one is the most probable one, and you take a
Mhm.
call on that.
Mhm. Right. What measures do you take or maintain to maintain data privacy and comply with regulatory requirements in the finance domain? That's a question from Sophie Geller.
Well, data security is very important because banks deal with customer data, right? And banks have their own proprietary data.
Mhm.
So important security of data, and every regulator will ensure that banks maintain the security of their own data. So that's paramount thing. So when we say about data management is not just about storage of the data or cleaning of data. It's also about uh, security of the data, how it can be shared internally on the networks, or if people are sharing it outside world, how it is supposed to be shared.
Anton, how has that impacted yourself, the regulatory requirements around?
Yeah, so we are a regulated business. We are a EMI institution in a number of countries, and for a global institution, also the sort of the global regulatory landscape becomes important because those regulations are very different. Can be much more onerous or much less onerous. I agree with Vital that data security is absolutely critical, especially for third-party customer data. As a payments company, there's obviously personal data, there's credit card data, there's all sorts of data that can really cause you trouble if it gets into the wrong hands, internally or externally. So that segregation and that oversight is absolutely critical.
Prabhu, I imagine some of the data you're dealing with is fairly confidential. How are you taking, what route are you taking to make sure that it's securitized?
Yeah, so there is multiple layers of measures. At the first layer, there is some kind of cryptographic algorithms that we employ so that the data is encrypted when it is transmitted across internal networks or to the cloud, for example. And then on the cloud, we in our group and in the startups associated with us, we rely extensively on blockchain or digital, distributed ledger technologies for securitizing the information. And unless there is a state actor involved,
Personal blockchain,
DLTs
or is
tend to
it
be
one
very powerful.
is that a personal
Sorry.
blockchain, or is it one you've developed, or is it?
Absolutely, these are permission blockchains. These are
Okay.
private blockchains that could be stored, locally at each of these premises, and then certain hash is stored globally that is, transacted across geographies or nations. Yeah.
Okay. How does data analytics contribute to optimizing treasury operations and maintaining financial risks? That's the next question from Shivrani.
Yeah, can you repeat the question? I lost the first.
How does data analytics contribute to optimizing treasury operations and managing financial risks? Is that not up on your screens?
No, but I could get the question. Yeah, so for risk management purpose, data again, as I said, is very important because you're trying to create scenarios and testing your portfolio with those scenarios. And if you create a wrong scenario, or if you train your model on the wrong set of data, you're not going to be quantifying the risk properly. So it's very important that your data has to be accurate, right? And so you need to maintain that data with the best possible checks. Once you clean it, it needs to be stored. How do you archive it? How do you take it out? So you have time series going all the way up to 2001, and for different assets, uh, you know to ensure that data is normalized. There are different regimes of data. So if you heard about global financial crisis, just
Mhm.
before the crisis, the data regime was different. After 2008, data regime is different. How do you compare two data sets is very important. So uh, you need to be expert in taking a call on what sort of data that needs to be used for training your models. It's not that you have tons of data and you train your model. You need to be very, very particular about the data set that you'll be using for training your models, because then the trained model would be used for forecasting, right? So that is, and then you become, after a while, become a subject matter expert. You know which data to avoid and which one to use. So that's the skill.
Super. So we are running out of time, but there's one final question I'd like to propose to you. And as startups are kind of core to my very existence and what I do through network science and projects, I'd just like to ask each of you in turn just one critical piece of advice that you would give to startups and entrepreneurs that they can take away from this meeting around data and currency and startups. So Anton, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I think, I'll reiterate, my previous point that be selective, about the data that you want to look into. It's expensive, both to collect data, to analyze data, etc. It's a lot of human resource and or, time in particular that goes into it. So the more focused you are, I think the better insights you're going to get and the better return you're going to get out of your efforts.
Perfect, thank you. Prabhu.
So I am authoring a series of innovation sutras, and one of them I would like to repeat in this context is what I say is intersectionality brings synthesis. I think in the context of modern startups, I think every startup today has to, in one way or the other, deal with data, right? And so what I would advise them is to look across their domain, just as we are doing today. We are looking at financial segment, we're looking at accounting, we're looking at engineering. There is a lot of good practice surrounding data in different domains, particularly in the financial domain. And I think all of us would do well to study those models and incorporate them in our own domain. And that's the advice I would like to give to the modern startup.
Okay, brilliant. And Vital.
Well, one piece of advice I would like to give is be unique. Sometimes it happens that people are all running after the same data set, right? So be unique. Try to understand. You will have cases in some other geography which is not there in your geography, right? Try to understand, compare data sets, do a lot of backtesting. Because many times it's very, people are eager to find the results and conclude, and then they start. My first piece of advice is keep on doing backtesting unless you are 100% sure. And then invest in human resource. Training is very important because the techniques keeps changing, the language keeps changing, the algorithms keeps changing. So you need to be on top of, you need to be on the cutting edge if you want to compete.
There we have it. So not necessarily data being the only currency, but being on the cutting edge, being at the forefront, being able to provide accurate dashboards, being able to help all of your C-suite, your staff, and provide secure, monetized data throughout the environment. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining me this afternoon. This is just about it. We are now wrapping up the Deep Tech Innovation Alley. This was the final session. I believe I've got the entire team jumping on to the call in a moment. So thank you for joining us, and I bid farewell. Thank you. Hello, everyone over in Mumbai. Hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you all. My fantastic effort, everybody. I know you've all, a lot of you have jumped in last minute to do commentary, to jump on sessions, to provide moderation. And Ash, you've done a fantastic job in the background, keeping us all in time and flashing up 5-minute warnings to everybody every now and then. It's been absolutely wonderful. Is the big man Sandy there at all? Is he around?
Yes. He's hiding.
Just off shot. So it's yeah. He's hiding around the corner, is he? Hello. The reluctant presenter from V. It's been a thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely brilliant. Not only you, but we had 29 external speakers over the last 4 days. We had a total 29 external speakers. Of course, all of them CEOs and C-level executives of large companies, institutions. We had close to about 16 network scientists, moderating and presenting on screen and things like that. Yeah, I
Did
believe
I
this is
see that during that last session that it jumped over 2,200 attendees?
2,000, yeah, close to 2,150 is what I saw last time, or maybe around that. But yeah, I mean, those many people have shown interest. They now know about Deep Tech Innovation Alley. They know that what is the quality of information, quality of conversations we undertake. We've been getting a lot of offline messages on, one specific sessions as well as about the overall event and how unique it is that we've created this. So, and it's a big thank you to every single one, from network science, within network science, as well as our partners, Jadu, to make this all happen. Thank you for attendees as well. And see you next year. See you next year.
Cheers.
See you then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys.
Good night. God bless. Have a good morning. Bye-bye.
And good night.